A sleepy southern town becomes a place of unimaginable horror as young girls begin disappearing. A cunning serial killer is on the loose, tormenting a family while evading capture. Until investigators could find a way to stop him, he would continue his hunt for more victims.
He was a predator, abducting girls and young women from their own front yards in broad daylight. He was a sadist, phoning one victim's family, taunting them, boosting, then dashing their hope. And he wouldn't stop until we stopped him. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. This serial killer, whoever he was, could pass unnoticed in society. Yet he craved the attention his crimes provided. Somewhere in this contradiction lay the key to his exposure.
May 31st, 1985. The afternoon sun over South Carolina roasted the town of Lexington to a blistering 100 degrees. Sherry Faye Smith had found relief from the heat at a pool party with her boyfriend and fellow high school seniors. She was looking forward to the carefree days between her final exams and graduation. All of summer and the rest of her life awaited the ambitious 17-year-old. She lived with her family in a quiet, rural community, a safe place tucked away on the edge of town. The Smiths' home sat on a generous lot of dense woods. The house was about 200 yards from the road. Sherry's dad, Robert Smith, served as a local pastor. This Friday afternoon, he worked at home in his second-floor office. He looked up from his studies to see his daughter pulling into the driveway and stopping to get the mail. In the next few moments, life in Lexington, South Carolina, changed forever. Expecting Sherry to walk in the house, Mr. Smith looked out the window again. He noticed her car remained near the mailbox, but she was nowhere in sight. Immediately, he felt something was odd. He decided to take a look. Sherry suffered from diabetes. With her blood sugar out of balance, she might become disoriented or incapacitated. When he arrived at the bottom of the driveway, Mr. Smith found Sherry's car still running, and the door swung open.
Sherry?
But his daughter was gone. There was no response to his call.
Sherry!
His mind began to race as he imagined the possibilities. Could she be lying in the woods somewhere, unconscious or in shock?
Sherry!
He yelled louder as he grew more frantic with worry.
Sherry!
There was no sign of her anywhere. Sherry was gone. Mr. Smith immediately called for help. The assistant sheriff of Lexington County responded to the call. The distraught father explained that Sherry was not the type to just run off.
I'm not sure what happened, but how much time it had.
She was responsible, warm, and well-adjusted. Not the sort of teenager to run away. But the sheriff took nothing for granted. He questioned Smith about his relationship with his daughter. Today, more than a decade later, Assistant Sheriff Louis McCarty vividly recalls his impressions of the Smith family during his first conversation with Sherry's father.
We discussed his daughter's grades, what kind of child she was. It was determined that there was no animosity between mother and father and daughter. The Smith family was a very, very close-knit family, a very religious family. You just had the sixth sense that they were extremely close, that this child would not have run away on her own.
The investigator couldn't shake the feeling that something bad had happened to Sherry Smith. And the same intuition told him it had nothing to do with her medical condition. Every minute that passed increased the likelihood that Sherry might never be found. Knowing this, the sheriff called for assistance, bypassing the 24-hour waiting period required before officially classifying an individual as a missing person. While waiting for the other officers to arrive, the sheriff and Robert Smith retraced Sherry's steps, careful not to destroy any possible evidence. But the naked eye search yielded nothing. They had to wait for more equipment and expertise. Within minutes, officers from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, known as SLED, arrived at the Smith home. Investigators combed the scene, looking for tire tracks, foot impressions, or fingerprints. They found nothing. Knowing the next few hours were critical, the authorities assembled a task force and organized a massive ground search. The possibility of an abduction prompted a swift response. Crimes like this simply did not happen. Surrounding counties sent every available officer to help. Word of Sherry's disappearance spread quickly through the close-knit community of Lexington. Hundreds of local residents offered to participate in the search. Still, they found no trace of the young woman. Though there was no direct evidence that a federal crime had been committed, state investigators called on the expertise of the FBI. They wanted the Bureau to unofficially advise in the search and to assist in the investigation. Special Agent John Vollmer from the FBI's Columbia office was dispatched to the Smiths' house the next morning. The disappearance had even baffled the experts.
She was nowhere to be found. And she was not from a type of family background where that would readily indicate she'd run off with somebody. She was from a very stable, good family background, and they immediately thought obviously something had happened to her. But we had no idea at that point what.
The search urgently continued, with hundreds of volunteers and officers working around the clock. It was a daunting task. The heat and terrain hindered the hunt.
When you're talking about looking in a county of 500 square miles, it's almost like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's extremely difficult because you don't know where to begin and where to go.
2 long, hot days of searching passed, and still there was no sign of Sherry. It grew more and more likely that this was an abduction. Horrified that a crime like this could happen in their town, the residents of Lexington were gripped by fear. Children were not seen without their parents. No one went anywhere alone. With every hour that passed, investigators hoped there was still enough time to find Sherry unharmed. On June 3rd, 3 days after Sherry Faye's disappearance, at about 2:30 in the morning, a call disturbed the Smiths' restless sleep. Robert answered the phone. A voice he did not recognize asked for his wife, Hilda.
Hello?
The caller claimed to be Sherry's abductor.
Yes.
The captor apologized for taking Sherry and insisted that she would eventually be returned. He made clear this was not a ransom call. He told Hilda that she would receive a letter in the mail later that day.
Just tell us what you want.
He promised he'd call back and hung up.
He hung up.
Though a phone tap had been set up earlier, the call was too short to get a trace. SLED officers who were at the Smith home called Agent Vollmer immediately.
It really was unclear whether she was alive or dead. The caller was indicating that she was alive, that he would see that she was returned safely. And I think at that point everyone was hopeful that he was truthful and that in fact she was not dead and would be returned to her home and family.
A letter, hopefully containing clues to Sherry's whereabouts, would be a welcome break. But first they had to find out if the letter, promised by the caller, really did exist. Not wasting any time, they woke the town's postmaster and ordered him to open the post office before daybreak. Then they went to work, sifting letter by letter through the piles of outgoing mail.
Long envelope, something similar to this.
After a half hour, the postmaster found an envelope addressed to the Smiths. Carefully, they slipped it into an evidence bag and sent it to the SLED forensic labs for analysis. Inside the envelope, examiners found a 2-page letter written on yellow legal paper. Their excitement melted into horror as they began reading the letter. It was entitled, Last Will and Testament. It began, I love you, Mommy, Daddy, Robert, Dawn, and Richard, and everyone else, and all other friends and relatives. My thoughts will always be with and in you. Casket closed. I am sorry if I ever disappointed you in any way. I only wanted to make you proud of me because I have always been proud of my family. The letter ended with, all my love, always, Sharon, Sherry Faye, Smith. With the help of the Smith family, investigators confirmed that the handwriting was Sherry's. Lab examiners began the painstaking task of analyzing the letter. Searching for prints, hairs, fibers, and other clues would take weeks. While investigators hoped the document might provide other valuable leads, they were alarmed by the letter's content.
We were shocked. We were concerned for her well-being. There were several phrases in the letter that she refers to. One would be casket closed. Is, you know, why would a child make a statement, casket closed?
Sherry's fate was unclear. The abductor had all the answers. He had promised to call again. Until he did, the Smith family clung desperately to hope. Just days after Sherry Faye's disappearance, her abductor had called to taunt the family. Since then, agents and detectives set up a voice recorder in addition to the tap already on the Smith phone. Having the abductor's voice on tape would be invaluable. If the suspect called again, they would be ready. The wait was excruciating. At 8 o'clock on the evening of June 3rd, the phone rang.
Go ahead and answer it. Try to stay on the phone as long as possible.
Hello?
It was the voice from the night before. He spoke to Hilda.
Did you receive the letter today?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you know now that this is not a hoax call.
Yes, I know that.
Okay, listen real carefully. I got to hurry. I know these calls are being traced.
Is Sherry with you?
Sherry is now part of me. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, our souls are one now.
Your souls are one now with Sherry?
Yes, and we're trying to work this out. So please do what we ask.
The trace had been successful.
Go ahead, US 1.
The suspect had called from a phone booth about 20 miles away from the Smith home. A network of sheriff's deputies staking out the area raced to the scene, hoping to catch the caller still on the phone. But when they arrived, all they found was a phone dangling off the hook.
Area, any cars? Give me plates, any cars leaving the immediate area right now.
He had slipped away, leaving nothing behind, not even fingerprints.
They just missed him.
Sherry's older sister, Dawn, recollects the agonizing uncertainty.
I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I didn't understand that he was a very sick person. I'd never dealt with anybody like that in my life. But I really believed that he was taking care of her and that there had to be some reason for the madness of Sherry being taken.
On the surface, the abductor's phone conversations revealed nothing about Sherry's whereabouts. However, for the FBI, the phone calls offered the first glimpse inside the mind of this twisted predator. It would be up to FBI profilers in the Investigative Support Unit at Quantico, Virginia, to penetrate this criminal's mind. John Douglas pioneered behavioral profiling for the FBI. He and others developed the investigative tool from over 25 years of interviews with convicted killers, arsonists, rapists, and bombers.
When someone asks for a profile, what they're looking for are characteristics, which includes gender, includes age, race, sometimes body typing, educational level, occupational type.
To determine these characteristics, the profiler attempts to think like the killer. He tries to uncover his motivations. Examining every aspect of a crime reveals patterns of behavior. What emerges is a profile describing the type of person the killer will most likely be. After scrutinizing every detail of Sherry's abduction, Douglas generated a 22-point profile of the suspect. He painted the abductor as a white male, in his late 20s to early 30s, with above-average intelligence. He would most likely work as a blue-collar day laborer. Because it sounded as if the killer had electronically distorted his voice, he probably worked in electrical contracting. He would have a prior criminal record. Douglas also suggested he lived locally. The tone and content of his phone calls indicated he was an asocial obsessive-compulsive. If the stress of everyday life became too great, he would break down. He would then feel compelled to compensate for his own inadequacies through violent actions.
He's the type of guy that feels like one grain of sand on a beach where there are billions and billions of grains of sand. He feels like nothing. He feels like a nobody. And how can this nobody, this personality, this person who's probably overweight, low self-esteem, unattractive, how can he become a somebody? He'll go after victims that there was no chance that he would ever come in contact with someone like a Sherry Faye Smith. And so for the first time in their life, they can be powerful.
On Wednesday, June 5th, the Smiths received another call. This time, he gave the family directions to where they would find Sherry.
Listen carefully. Take Highway 378 west to traffic circle. Turn left at white frame building. 6 feet beyond, we're waiting. God chose us.
Investigators raced to the location, hoping they might still find her alive. Six days after her mysterious disappearance, investigators found the body of Sherry Faye Smith.
When the Smith family received the call to the location of the body, we went immediately there, and our worst fears came true.
Sherry's body had been laid in the woods of Saluda County, some 17 miles from the home from which she vanished. Her abductor was now wanted for first-degree murder. A week of 100-degree heat had taken its toll. The body's advanced state of decay worked in the killer's favor. The medical examiner could not determine the exact cause and time of death. To John Douglas, the location and condition of the crime scene provided further insight into the suspect's mind.
He had some criminal sophistication, because I believe what he did is he waited for her to now go into advanced stages of decomposition, which would make it more difficult for law enforcement to determine cause and method of death in this state of decomposition.
The confirmation of Sherry's murder devastated the Lexington community. That Saturday, a crowd of 1,000 mourners attended a funeral service at the town's First Baptist Church. That evening, following Sherry's funeral, the killer could not resist inflicting more torment.
Well, may I speak to Mrs. Smith?
Sherry's Aunt Beverly answered the phone.
I want to speak to Dawn.
I'm sorry, she's not available either.
Beverly stalled him, hoping to gain valuable time for the phone trace.
Yeah, I'll have to go then if I can't talk to her.
But the suspect threatened to hang up if he couldn't immediately speak to Dawn.
Hello?
This thing got out of hand, and all I wanted to do was make love to Dawn. I've been watching her for a couple of weeks.
To who?
To Sherry. Dawn, I hope you and your family forgive me for this.
When you killed Sherry, was she at peace? She wasn't afraid or anything?
She was not. She was at peace. She knew that God was with her, and she was going to become an angel.
Overwhelmed with grief, Sherry's mother insisted on talking to her daughter's murderer.
Did you tell her you were going to kill her?
Yes, I did, and I gave her the choice, and she picked suffocation.
My God, how could you?
It did not escape the attention of the FBI and local investigators that the killer had mistakenly used Dawn's name when he spoke of Sherry. They braced themselves for the possibility that this killer might be turning his murderous obsession towards Dawn. But the suspect would make only one more call before falling ominously silent. Though he wasn't talking, they knew he was still out there, terrifying a community. And the profile predicted that if he killed once, he would kill again. In June 1985, FBI investigators continued to hunt the kidnapper and killer of 17-year-old Sherry Smith. While investigators focused on the Smith murder, the elusive predator pursued other plans. On Friday, June 14th, 2 weeks after Sherry's abduction, a man grabbed Deborah May Helmick from her front yard in Richland County as she played with her brother. She was just 9 years old. The child's screaming alerted a neighbor. But the woman was not fast enough. The abductor managed to slip away in broad daylight. Helmick's neighbor could only provide vague information. However, the general description of the suspect and his method appeared eerily similar to the man the FBI wanted for the murder of Sherry. Richland County sheriffs immediately contacted the task force in nearby Lexington.
Within moments of that abduction, we were aware of it and began to focus on that case also. We were pretty much in our minds, I think that everybody knew these two cases were connected.
For John Douglas, the case took on an even greater sense of urgency. Deborah May Helmick's fate seemed almost certain.
Once they get the urge, they're out looking for the preferential victim, but if they cannot find the victim of choice, they will go after whoever is available. And that was the case here with Deborah May Helmick.
News of the second abduction brought Douglas down from Quantico, Virginia to South Carolina. The FBI hoped they could find 9-year-old Deborah May Helmick before her young life was cut short. In the Smith case, the killer's phone calls had been a critical link for the investigators. It had been nearly a week since Deborah's disappearance, and they hadn't heard from him. To get him to call, Douglas devised a plan. With the help of the local media, he would set a trap.
And the way that
One
we do
key
that is
element
by
of the
making
plan
them
placed Dawn Smith in jeopardy. Douglas had to ask the Smiths to put their other daughter at risk to catch Sherry's killer and hopefully find young Deborah. Dawn agreed.
A lot of times people thought we were twins. We looked a lot alike, and so they came up with this plan that if I were to answer the phone, maybe he would turn that fascination from Sherry to me. And if I could keep him on the phone talking long enough about Sherry, about himself, about anything to keep him on the phone, then they could trace the call and catch him.
just allow him to.
Douglas's strategy centered around a memorial service for Sherry. Investigators promoted the service in the local press. The agents hoped the attention to his first victim would rekindle the killer's fascination with Dawn. Douglas needed something else to bait the trap, a personal item from Sherry's room. Based on experience, Douglas knew that sexual predators are often attracted to personal items of their victims.
She likes koalas.
They want mementos that they can keep, even display as trophies. He noticed the koala bear. It was the mascot of the university she planned to attend in the fall.
This is going to work perfectly.
The day of the memorial service, plainclothed agents swarmed the grounds, hoping their suspect would visit the cemetery. As the family's minister delivered a eulogy, Dawn and her parents huddled close. Though Dawn had willingly volunteered to lure the killer to the trap, the danger it presented weighed on everyone's mind. There was no telling what the suspect might do.
The security around Dawn was heightened. We were extremely concerned about Dawn becoming a victim.
Then, as planned, Dawn placed some flowers and the koala bear on her sister's grave. Now all that was left to do was wait. Using Douglas's profile, FBI agents coached Dawn on how to handle the suspect when he called.
I was told to never be threatening, to never be harsh, to be real understanding and sympathetic and compassionate, and I was with him. And I think he liked that because he felt like he was very much in charge, which is something that he thrived on.
Several calls came to the Smith home following the memorial service. Not knowing if it was Sherry's killer, Dawn had to answer every one. Shortly after midnight, the phone at the Smith house rang again.
Hello? I have a call to Dawn Smith from Sherry. Will you back to the call?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
As Douglas had hoped, the culprit took the bait. And as anticipated, the killer had turned his focus to Dawn.
You can't be protected all the time.
He made it clear to her that she was going to be his next victim.
You know, God wants you to join Cherry Bay. It's just a matter of time. This month.
Despite the threat, Dawn kept him on the line, enduring abuse from the man who murdered her sister, while officials traced the origin of the call.
Richland County?
Yeah, okay, listen carefully. Go one north.
Then, before hanging up, the killer offered directions.
Turn right. Deborah May is waiting. God forgive us all.
Special Agent John Vollmer feared that the killer would not stop there.
Once he called about Deborah Helmick, then you're leading into the possibility that you now are dealing with a possible serial killer who has killed now at least 2, you suspect, maybe others before, and may continue to kill others.
Despite Douglas's success at getting the suspect to call, no one had anticipated just how far away the killer would go to avoid detection. Tracing the call from outside the area took additional time. Again, the suspect left the phone booth moments before the authorities could reach him.
We were very, very close to catching him on a number of occasions, and it's almost as if he sensed this and began to move further in making his phone call.
Other investigators followed the caller's directions. There, they found 9-year-old Deborah May Helmick murdered. The gamble had failed. With every missed opportunity, the probability of more victims increased. And now, Dawn was the most likely target. Investigators feared the killer would make an attempt to abduct her. An elusive serial killer had already killed 2 girls around Lexington, South Carolina. The slim amount of evidence frustrated FBI investigators as well as local law enforcement. But the forensic analysis was about to generate the biggest break in the investigation. The last will and testament of Sherry Smith was examined by Gail Heath, director of the Question Document section of the South Carolina Law Enforcement Labs. Using an ESDA machine, Heath hoped to find hard evidence. The ESDA, an acronym for Electrostatic Detection Apparatus, can pick up images that are invisible to the naked eye. It works on the opposite principle of a printing press. Instead of coating raised letters with ink to create an image, the ESDA fills in the indentations on the document in question with graphite. When an imaging film similar to Saran wrap is pulled tight over the document, a readable image comes through. After hours of examining the document, Heath found indented writing. It appeared to be a phone number and a name.
The particular name and phone number in question, we were able to bring up the entire area code, the first 3 numbers of the prefix, the next 2 numbers, the 3rd number we were unsure of, and then we had the 4th number.
The name on the pad was Joe. From the area code, investigators determined the number was from Alabama. To fill in the missing digit, investigators called every combination of the phone number until they reached a party who had the same name as the one found on the legal pad. They finally made a match. The number belonged to a man named Joe Shepard. Investigators scrutinized his phone records. They found that he had received a call from an address just outside of Lexington in Lake Murray, South Carolina. Either of these addresses could belong to the killer. Armed with the FBI profile, local police visited the Alabama address.
How you doing? You Mr. Shepard?
They met Joe Shepard. He didn't match the killer's profile. Even though he was not a suspect, he could still be an important link to the killer. Police had to find out the connection between him and the Lake Murray, South Carolina phone call. Shepard explained it came from his parents' home. South Carolina officers verified that the address belonged to Joe Shepard's parents, Ellis and Sharon Shepard. Investigators went to the Lake Murray address to question the residents. The house was just 2 miles from where police found the body of 9-year-old Deborah May Helmick.
10-4.
They learned that Ellis worked as an electrician in home construction. It was a profession the FBI profile predicted. As the officers knocked on the door, a car pulled into the driveway. When investigators saw the Shepards, they immediately felt they had hit another dead end. Besides Ellis Shepard's profession, nothing else seemed to fit the profile. They questioned them anyway. The Shepards told them that they had recently returned from a 6-week trip. The officers casually asked if the couple knew about the Smith and Helmick murders. With every question, the police noticed Mrs. Shepard becoming more concerned. The Shepards were beginning to suspect their house sitter, Larry Jean Bell. As they described Bell, elements of the profile fell into place. He was a white male, in his 30s, who lived with his parents. He sometimes assisted Ellis in home construction. Just days earlier, when the Shepards returned from the vacation, Bell had picked them up from the airport. He talked to the Shepards at length about the cases. He was closely following the news of the murders. It was more evidence of a meticulous mind and behavior consistent with the profile.
They said that he had saved the newspaper articles, told them all about the case in great detail from the airport back to their residence. Again, it was uncanny how much this profile was on track.
The detectives asked if they could see the inside of the house. Suspecting the killer had used a weapon to force Sherry Smith into the car, they asked Ellis Shepard if he owned a gun. Shepard led them to a drawer where he kept his revolver.
Last time I used this gun.
To his surprise, the gun was gone.
Got a good idea.
The officers asked the couple to accompany them to the precinct. They wanted the Shepards to listen to recordings of the killer's calls to the Smith family. The investigators needed to know if the voice on the recordings belonged to their house sitter.
For a couple of months, and then they'd find out I'm sane, and then I'd get tried and get sent to electric chair, put in prison rest of my life. I'm not going to stay in prison rest of my life.
Though the caller may have electronically altered his voice, to the Shepards, it was clear that the man on the tape was their house sitter, Larry Jean Bell.
I filled in all the holes and everything.
We were all extremely elated. We could not show any emotion, but we knew that we had the case at that point. We had our man.
She said 12 or something, but anyway.
The Shepards told the police that they expected Bell to return to their home at 7:30 the next morning for work.
We're going to have a Detective Perry take you outside.
Investigators staked out Bell's residence. This time, there was no way he could elude capture. Larry Jean Bell headed down the highway to the Shepards. He failed to notice the unmarked police car following behind him. The officers radioed to another car waiting to cut him off at the approaching intersection. June 26, 1985, at 7:19 a.m., investigators finally trapped the elusive Larry Gene Bell. This time, it was the investigators who were one step ahead. Bell was arrested without resistance and taken to the precinct for questioning. With Bell now in custody, investigators still needed to build an airtight case to make sure he would never be free to kill again. Combining hard forensic evidence with the FBI profile, South Carolina police arrested Larry Gene Bell on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. But now they had to prove beyond any doubt that he was indeed the killer of Sherry Smith and Deborah May Hellman. It was up to Lexington County Solicitor Donald Myers to make the case. A career prosecutor, Myers was determined to convict the killer who had so horrifically taunted his victim's family.
I did not like Larry Gene Bell even before I knew him. And I knew that this was probably the most publicized case that we would ever had, the most publicized in South Carolina up to that time. And I pretty much committed myself to go after him with everything I had.
Though there was powerful evidence against Bell, it was only circumstantial. Still, in the state of South Carolina, a confession could guarantee the maximum sentence. Myers needed to make sure that Bell would never be able to take another life.
Stacked up against him.
He wanted a confession.
He's facing a mountain of evidence.
Again, they called on the FBI to help. They recommended setting up an interrogation room that would elicit a self-incriminating statement.
For instance, a map showing where the phone calls were made, some pictures of the victim so that he's aware as he looks about the room to remind him of the victim. You might have fingerprint cards on the table. You might have notebooks or file cabinets that would have his name on them, all to make him think you obviously have narrowed in on him, you've got the goods on him, he might as well go ahead and give it up.
While the officers prepared to question Bell, other detectives secured a search warrant for the Shepherd's house. For the next 12 hours, the forensic team combed every square inch of the home, looking for anything that would firmly connect Bell to the crimes. As the profile predicted, the house was in perfect order. It was meticulously cleaned, vacuumed, and dusted, particularly in the room where Larry Gene Bell had been staying. But beneath the orderly exterior, the team uncovered evidence of his deviance. The bed's pristine sheets concealed a thin, dirty mattress, and beneath that lay a porn magazine and a handgun that matched the description of Mr. Shepherd's missing .38. Despite the freshly vacuumed carpets, an investigator retrieved a blonde hair in the space where a vacuum cleaner wouldn't reach. A lab would match the strand to Sherry Smith.
Mel, how are you this afternoon?
While the investigators continued the search for evidence at the Shepherd's home, detectives at the interrogation carried out the FBI's strategy. First, they made sure Bell was comfortable. As advised by Douglas, they spoke to the suspect in a non-threatening way. They pretended to empathize with him, to understand his pain, in order to pry him open. They walked their suspect through the growing mound of evidence condemning him. At every chance, they reminded him of the victims. Bell denied everything. However, he did make a curious request. He wanted to meet Dawn and Hilda Smith. Hoping the mother and sister of his first victim might stir a confession, the Smiths agreed. Hilda and Dawn tried to mentally prepare themselves. Finally, they stepped into the room and came face to face with Sherry's killer.
He began to mumble and he began to speak about how he was sorry that the person sitting in that chair couldn't have been the one that had done this. But another, Larry Bell, could have been the one. Just, he really didn't make a lot of sense. And so I remember sitting there, I remember looking at him, I remember listening to him, and I really just felt disgust. That I knew this was the man. And he wasn't even man enough to say, I did it, I'm sorry. Just trying to make excuses. But my mom said the most incredible thing to him. She said, I know you're the man that killed my daughter, and I can honestly say that I don't hate you. And he got teary.
But Bell's emotional break went only to the point of tears. He never made the confession authorities wanted. After weeks of compiling evidence, Myers and the investigators began to piece together the sequence of events of May 31st, 1985. Bell noticed Sherry Smith after dropping his mother off at a doctor's appointment. Something about the young woman triggered his lecherous cravings. As she left the parking lot, Bell followed. His desire shattered what little restraint he possessed. He never let her out of his sight. Sherry did not notice the car following her down the road. She pulled into the driveway and stopped at the mailbox. Bell wasted no time.
Tell me the way to...
He had taken Sherry completely by surprise.
Come on, you're going with me!
Yeah, you know, Timmy,
He brought Sherry to the shepherd's house on Lake Murray. Bell then canceled dinner with friends. He told them he wanted to stay at the shepherd's and watch a baseball game. He had already tied Sherry to the bed. The evidence showed that Sherry had been raped. Before killing her, Bell coerced Sherry to write her last will and testament. "12 hours after she disappeared, he covered her mouth with duct tape and suffocated her. Investigators believed that she was dead by 4:58 a.m., the time Bell claimed that their souls became one. It took less than 1 hour for 12 South Carolinians to find Bell guilty of first-degree murder. Myers prosecuted Bell in a separate trial for the murder of 9-year-old Deborah May Helmick. He was found guilty a second time. With Bell's conviction, the Smith family could begin to rebuild their lives.
There was a sense of relief that, okay, now he can't do this to me, he can't do this to anybody else, and he will be put away.
Larry Gene Bell paid the ultimate price for his sadistic crimes. On October 4th, 1996, he was put to death in South Carolina's electric chair. Though the loss of Sherry Smith and Deborah May Helmick will always be felt, life in Lexington has slowly returned to normal. With skill and determination, the South Carolina law enforcement community and the FBI brought closure to a grieving town by ending the deadly game of cat and mouse. One by one, prostitutes die across Central Europe. Austrian authorities believe one man is responsible. But they have no experience hunting serial killers. They turn to an FBI profiler for help. He finds the same killer has come to America, and the death count keeps rising until the FBI stops him.
Beginning in 1990, Europe found itself in the clutches of a serial killer. He became an international outlaw, hopping from country to country to evade capture and to kill again. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Legal cooperation between countries and continents is not common, but neither are serial killers in Europe. Desperate to apprehend him, Austrian authorities called on the FBI for help.
In Austria, the exchange of sex for money has been legal for years. Here, prostitutes walk the streets for men willing to pay for their services. Throughout most of the 1980s, Heidemarie Hammerer worked in the city of Bregenz as a prostitute. A licensed professional for almost 10 years. She was used to unusual requests. But on the night of December 5th, 1990, a customer went too far. The killer hurriedly redressed his victim. Then he dragged her through a secluded forest some 10 miles away and left her body. The crime went undiscovered for 3 weeks. On the morning of New Year's Eve, 1990, a pair of hikers stumbled upon Hammerer's body. Though the body had been left exposed to the elements, the winter temperatures helped preserve the remains. Austrian authorities determined that Hammerer had been strangled with her own pantyhose. Her wrists were bruised from restraints. At the autopsy, they found no sexual discharge on her body. But they did find fibers that were inconsistent with her clothing. She was only the first victim. Over the next several months, 3 more prostitutes died violently throughout Austria. Brunhilde Masser was recovered in a stream bed near Graz. Elfriede Schrempf, also from Graz, was found nearby in the woods. Near Vienna, Sylvia Zagler was discovered in a stand of trees. The women had all been bruised, strangled with their pantyhose, and left in various states of undress, lying face down in wooded areas. The Austrian public was shocked. On April 4th, 1991, the authorities gathered their most experienced investigators to focus on the slayings. Because of the similarities in the 4 cases, investigators reasoned that one person was responsible. Austria had its first serial killer in modern history. They had no experience investigating these offenders. Dr. Ernst Geiger, one of Austria's leading detectives, was assigned to coordinate the hunt.
No lead was promising. All the leads ended nowhere. We had no real suspect.
The first break came when a retired policeman read of the murders in a Salzburg newspaper. They reminded him of a case he solved in 1974. Detective Geiger received a phone call from the retired officer. 15 years earlier, he told Geiger, a young woman had been strangled with one of her undergarments and dumped in the woods. Just like the present victims. The killer was caught and convicted, but had recently been paroled. Detective Geiger took the name of the ex-convict, Johann Jack Unterweger.
Jack Unterweger was paroled after 15 years because he had murdered a young girl before, and while he was in prison, he became a writer, quite a famous writer.
But was it possible that this famous writer could be a serial killer? Geiger and his team began looking into the journalist's background. Until 1990, Jack Unterweger had led a difficult life. He was born to a German prostitute who quickly abandoned him. He suffered neglect and abuse, shuttling between various foster situations. As a teenager, Jack began to play out the rage of his dismal childhood. By age 25, that fury earned Unterweger a life sentence. Unterweger continued his education and started writing while in prison. He published letters, plays, short stories, and an autobiography. In the book that became a bestseller, Unterweger painted a tragic tale of himself as victim. Critics and the public alike embraced the author for the apparent honesty with which he confronted his past. The literary community suggested that art had redeemed him. Eventually, the press and the public at large demanded that his life sentence be commuted. On May 12, 1990, Austrian authorities agreed. The 40-year-old Austrian walked out of prison. He was a free man, determined never to spend another minute of his life behind bars. Shortly after his release, he was hired by a major German magazine to cover the prostitute murders. He promised to use his writing in a socially conscious way. He told his editor that he wanted to give voice to the dispossessed, caught in the underbelly of society, as he once was. By July 1991, after 2 more prostitutes were found strangled, psychologist Tom Mueller of Austria's Criminal Investigation Division joined the team.
When we started the investigation against Jack Unterweger, it was pretty hard because all his friends were within the media and they couldn't understand that he could be the bad guy.
Even among investigators, only a handful considered this celebrity journalist a possible suspect. Through receipts and travel records, Geiger and Mueller learned that Unterweger had been at each murder location. This was not suspicious in itself, since he was covering the story as an investigative journalist. Yet he always reached those destinations before the murders took place. Investigators also discovered that Unterweger had visited Prague in September 1990. Just before a Czechoslovakian woman, Blanka Bokova, was strangled with her pantyhose. She was the earliest victim in the string of murders that now totaled 7.
And what was outstanding for us, that exactly at any time where Czech hang out at any place in Prague, in the western part of Austria, in the southern part of Austria, exactly in that time period there was always a dead body somewhere in the woods.
In Austria, another woman, Regina Prem, had been missing for months and presumed dead. Her family waited desperately for news of her fate. In October of 1991, the grief-stricken husband and son received a chilling phone call to their unlisted number. The caller told him that he was Regina's killer and described what she was wearing the night she disappeared. The caller claimed that he was the executioner, that God ordered him to do it, that she was left lying on the place of sacrifice with her face turned towards hell. The phone call was cruel torture to an already traumatized family. When police recovered her body, they confirmed Regina Prem was the killer's 8th victim to date. The discovery put them no closer to stopping the killer. Vienna, October 22, 1991. Austrian authorities questioned Unterweger for the first time. With no hard evidence to connect him to the crimes, they hoped for a confession. He admitted to consorting with prostitutes for his writing assignments and for sex. But he denied knowing the victims. Although his alibis were weak, investigators were forced to release him. Their evidence was merely circumstantial, and his public support was growing. But Mueller and Geiger still believed Unterweger was a strong suspect and continued digging into his past. They tracked down the car Jack drove when he was first released from prison. But it had been a year since he sold it, and the likelihood of finding any usable evidence was slim. The team uncovered little, except a hair fragment.
It's good. It's good.
Although it was a long shot, investigators sent the hair fragment to the University of Bern for analysis. Enough of the hair root remained for lab technicians to extract a DNA sequence. That sequence was compared to those of the victims. Of the 8 women slain, the DNA from the hair matched the earliest victim from Prague, Blanka Bokova, killed in September 1990. It was a breakthrough. But that only proved the woman was in the car when Jack owned it. Investigators needed stronger evidence. Now back at police headquarters, Geiger questioned Austrian prostitutes. They recognized Unterweger as a regular customer who insisted they wear handcuffs during sex. More importantly, one recalled seeing him approach her friend, Heide Marie Hammerer, the first victim discovered in Bregenz. She also remembered he wore a brown leather jacket on that night. On the strength of this identification and the hair fragment found in his car, Geiger obtained a warrant to search Unterweger's apartment.
Jack Unterweger? Polizei!
When the police arrived, Unterweger was nowhere to be found. They took away clothing, including a brown leather jacket for forensic examination. Then one of the detectives discovered some receipts in a trash can. They were from a seafood restaurant in Malibu, California, dated 9 months earlier. Jack Unterweger had been to the United States. But the apartment search yielded less than the investigators had hoped. They found no hard evidence that directly tied Unterweger to the slayings. Since their case was still too weak to issue an arrest warrant, the investigation stalled. Jack Unterweger was still one step ahead. To stop him, Geiger needed help from those more experienced with catching serial killers. He needed the FBI. The Austrian investigators visited the U.S. Embassy. They met with legal attaché Julianne Slisko, an FBI agent stationed in Vienna.
I'm hoping you could help us with the FBI.
Slisko called the criminal profiling unit in Quantico, Virginia.
Hi, Agent McCrary.
She was patched through to Special Agent Greg McCrary.
Killings here in Austria.
Now retired, McCrary spent the last 10 of his 25 years in the FBI, pioneering the science of profiling.
The Austrians contacted the FBI because they were trying to tap into our experience of dealing with serial homicide investigations. This was the first serial murder investigation in modern history in Austria.
McCrary agreed to assist the Austrians. He would help them determine if one perpetrator could have committed all the murders. When Geiger told Slisko that Unterweger had traveled to L.A. the previous summer, she authorized a telex to be sent to California to inform local authorities. Over the next several days, Geiger and Mueller prepared for their trip to the FBI, packing crime scene reports, autopsy protocols, and photos. Then they received a call from LA detective Fred Miller. Miller had received their telex and said that California had suffered a similar pattern of killings during the prior summer. Now investigators turned their attention to LA, 6,000 miles away, in the hunt for the Austrian serial killer. By the fall of 1991, 8 women had been found dead in Central Europe. The prime suspect was Austrian celebrity writer Jack Unterweger. But little forensic evidence tied him to the crimes. And the public believed the police were pursuing an innocent man. An FBI telex from Vienna to California caught the attention of Los Angeles detective Fred Miller. He and his partner, Jim Harper, had been working for months on a series of unsolved murders. In style and pattern, the LA crimes resembled the ones that Unterweger was suspected of in Austria.
This immediately lit the fires, and it was just unbelievable to go all these 8 months and without the suspect turning up or another murder. This was quite a boost to the investigation.
The American and Austrian investigators compared notes. The cases were clearly similar. The victims were prostitutes. All had been strangled using intimate apparel. And all the bodies were left in remote locations. Now, Miller and Harper began to reconstruct Unterweger's visit to California. They checked the airlines, car rental agencies, and hotel logs. From these, they created a timeline of his movements.
We learned that he came to Los Angeles in June of '91 on vacation, right around June the 2nd or 3rd, and that he left around the 17th of July.
In the summer of 1990, Unterweger visited LAPD headquarters.
I'm a journalist, and I am interested.
He strolled into the public relations office, presented his press credentials, and signed up for the Ride-Along program.
And the Austrian police.
This program allows civilians to tag along with police in their cruisers as they patrol the city.
Tonight at 8:30
As all Jack's credentials were in order, the request was accepted.
It's Jack Unterweger.
Unterweger claimed he was writing a German magazine story, contrasting American and European prostitution. He asked to be shown where the city's prostitutes hung out. The officers introduced him to the seedier areas of Los Angeles. Detective Jim Harper explains.
I mean, if you come to a city as big as Los Angeles, you know, prostitutes don't hang out everywhere. You gotta know where they hang out. What better way to do that than get a ride along with the police department?
Witnesses last saw 21-year-old Shannon Exley in the vicinity of 7th Street and Main Street.
What's that you're saying?
She had been working the streets since she'd run away from home at 16. Her life ended on June 20th, 1991. Her nude body was found with her bra wrapped around her neck. Marks on her feet told investigators she had already been strangled when she was dragged some 50 feet to where she was found.
The lacerations across her neck.
Medical technicians were able to isolate DNA sequences from the semen of 7 men. But LA detectives had no suspects with whom they could compare the samples. 10 days later, investigators discovered a second prostitute, Irene Rodriguez. She was found behind a tractor trailer, only 1.5 miles from where Exley's body had been dumped. Both women had been strangled with their bras, and both were last seen in the vicinity of 7th and Main Street. The detectives discovered that Unterweger was living nearby.
We learned that he stayed at the Cecil Hotel, which is located at 643 South Main, which is right on the corner of 7th and Main Street, and that's the location where, close proximity where both our victims were last seen.
A third victim, Sherry Long, was found near Malibu less than 2 weeks later. Once again, Unterweger was staying at a hotel in the vicinity Long was last seen. Around her neck, her bra was tied tightly. Detective Jim Harper remembers the unique method of strangulation.
The way the bras were tied around their neck was nothing that I had seen before. Looks to me it took a lot of intricate time to really take time with the victim and put it around their necks and tie it.
Los Angeles criminalist Lynn Harold compared the knots to see if there was a pattern in the way each had been made and tied.
In order for the knots to be made, the wearing apparel had to be dismantled in some form. It's not like the bras were just taken and tied in a square knot, but they were stripped of the elastic always on the left side. And if 3 people randomly went out and strangled 3 people, it is extremely unlikely that all 3 of them would come up with this same scenario.
Now Geiger and Mueller added the information from the Los Angeles murders to their own case and headed to Virginia. They hoped that the FBI could determine whether one man had indeed killed all 11 women. Back in Austria, Jack Unterweger maintained a high profile.
Guten Abend,
The celebrity journalist continued to publish his articles and appeared on television to talk about the murders. He told audiences that the Austrian police were inept at finding the real killer and had singled him out as a scapegoat. Unterweger claimed that the authorities were determined to send him back to prison, even if that meant framing him for the grisly crimes. Unterweger remained popular with the public at large and in the nightclubs where he was a regular. To his fans, and especially women, he was still charming. He boasted the police had no evidence, only theories. And they would never be able to send him back to prison. In August 1992, Austrian detectives arrived at Quantico, Virginia. They needed an experienced FBI profiler to help them capture the serial killer that had left 11 women dead in Central Europe and California. The Austrians came with 12 boxes of evidence.
Report on that.
Special Agent Greg McCrary refused to look at any information on the prime suspect, Jack Unterweger. He didn't want any preconceived notions to interfere with his analysis. Instead, McCrary wanted to focus on the victims.
I wanted all the case materials on all of the homicides, victimology, a lot about the victims and their background, their history, the method and manner of death, autopsy reports, crime scene photos, everything that was available from an investigative point of view. What we didn't want is suspect information. We just wanted to take an objective look at all of the cases to see what we thought, if they might be related or not, and the type of offender that we thought might be most probably involved in committing these crimes.
Let's get to work.
McCrary did not presuppose that the crimes were linked. He examined the similarities among the cases to see if they were unusual enough to have been committed by one perpetrator. He began to look for a behavioral thumbprint, a criminal signature in each of the murders.
A signature crime analysis is an assessment of the behavioral aspects of the crime, which can in some cases be a single event, but more often it's a constellation of behaviors that are consistent from crime to crime to crime. And this allows us to link crimes together behaviorally based on the behavior of the offender.
Could you push this one back?
Yes.
Yes.
McCrary looked for patterns.
Vienna, where all this took place.
He examined everything known about the 11 women. How similar were their lifestyles? Almost all the women were prostitutes, except for the first woman slain in Prague.
Mr. McCurry, this is a map of Vienna.
A companion last saw Blanka Bokova on September 14, 1990, leaving a bar in Prague, Czechoslovakia. Bokova worked as a sales clerk at a butcher shop, but was known to trade sex for favors. Her body was left on the bank of the Vlatva River in a stretch of woods near Bokova's home. The killer had strangled her with her own nylon stockings. He left her naked, covered with sticks and twigs. He threw her clothes and identification in the river. The first victim Austrian police found had been a registered prostitute for 10 years, Heide Marie Hammerer. In the early part of her career, she had suffered several violent attacks from customers, so she was known to be cautious. Hammerer was last seen outside a parking garage on December 5, 1990. Like the first 5 victims, Hammerer was found in the woods close to water. They all had restraint bruises on their arms and wrists. And autopsies found no semen on any of the European victims. To the profiler, this suggested that the killer struck out of impotence. He was terribly insecure about his masculinity. When he could not perform after being sexually stimulated, the killer lashed out in anger. He strangled the women he blamed for shaming him. Then he left their bodies in humiliating positions. Next, they focused on the LA murder victims. Did they fit the pattern that had been established in Europe? Shannon Exley was found face down in a grassy area near a freeway exit. She was nude except for a t-shirt and a pair of socks. She had been dragged 50 feet from the pavement to the location where she was discovered, after being strangled with her brassiere. Again, this crime, like the others in LA and Europe, showed the killer had preferences and that the violence itself had become erotic to him.
It became clear that there was a pattern to these homicides. That there was sort of a ritualistic behavior that occurred in each of these crime scenes. Each woman was similar in nature, either a prostitute or a woman who traded sex for favors. They were on the street when they were contacted, when they were picked up, usually very surreptitiously. No one really saw these women get into a car. They were transported out to an area, they were murdered, ligature strangled with an article of their own clothing, disposed in a similar manner in an outdoor setting, absence of sexual assault.
All right, roughly from where she was last
After a week, the study of the victimology convinced McCrary that there had indeed been only one killer behind the 11 homicides. The FBI agent and the Austrian detective spent the following week drawing up a profile of the assailant. The evidence suggested the killer had a good degree of mobility. He was older, intelligent, sophisticated, and an organized offender. To criminal psychologist Tom Mueller, this described Jack Unterweger.
I would say Jack was a very, very good example for a typical type of organized offender, and I would say he was a typical example for a natural psychologist. He was able to understand the needs of other people. He was able to come close to other people, to listen to other people, and then to manipulate them.
But the geography worked against the theory that there was one killer. The murders had occurred in Czechoslovakia, Austria, and Los Angeles. With minor exceptions, most serial killers stay regional and prey within a comfort zone. But enough time had elapsed between the slayings to permit one culprit to move around. Now the profiler compared Unterweger's travels to the chronology of the murders.
And when I overlaid Jack Unterweger's timeline on the timeline of the crimes, they fit perfectly. And that was really a dawning moment, the aha moment, the moment that's really exciting in analysis like this, because now you have a suspect whose movements correlate perfectly with each of the homicides, as well as his prior homicide that he had been convicted for, bearing a lot of similarities to these homicides. We can put him in each place at each time these crimes occurred. And either Jack Unterweger was the unluckiest man in the world to have been there, or he was an excellent suspect.
In Austria, Unterweger continued to enjoy his freedom and notoriety. Some women still found him appealing, even though the former convict was a prime murder suspect. This perplexed Detective Fred Miller.
One of the interesting facets of Jack Unterweger was that he could carry on a normal relationship with a female and still be this cruel and murder other females.
High school student Bianca Mrak was one of those that fell under his charm. The impressionable 18-year-old met Unterweger in a wine bar where she worked as a waitress. She was flattered by the attention from the celebrity writer. He told her he was tiring of all the publicity in Austria and might leave the country, maybe to Switzerland. She agreed to go with him wherever he went. August 1992. Agent Greg McCrary of the FBI worked with Austrian detectives to solve a series of 11 murders. 8 women were killed in Central Europe, 3 more in Los Angeles. All circumstantial evidence pointed to celebrity journalist Jack Unterweger as the culprit. Then they received a phone call from the University of Bern. Austrian lab technicians had completed the fiber analysis of clothing confiscated from Unterweger's apartment weeks before. The inspection had yielded results. Fibers from the lining of the brown leather jacket matched those on the body of Heide Marie Hammerer, the first prostitute found. It was hard forensic evidence that tied Unterweger to one of the victims. But investigators wanted to conclusively link the suspect to all the victims. The FBI had another tool that could do just that, VICAP, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. The computer database holds the details of 10,000 solved and unsolved U.S. homicides. A programmer inputted the particulars of the European and Los Angeles cases. Details of the victims, their manner of death, locations where they disappeared, and where they were found were all fed into the computer. McCrary ordered an extensive breakdown, a multi-dimensional search with 15 cross-criteria that could show if the crimes were connected.
I certainly will, Mr. McCrary.
48 hours later, the detectives were called back to the VICAP room to hear the answer. The results were stunning. The computer statistically linked all 11 slayings. Jack Unterweger was the killer. The FBI had given the Austrians solid proof for their case. But Unterweger was still at large. The Austrian detectives immediately returned to Vienna. Armed with the FBI profile, authorities issued an arrest warrant for Johann Jack Unterweger. Again, the police descended upon the writer's residence. But Jack was gone. He had abandoned his flat. Geiger called his office and ordered his team to check all of Austria's ports of exit. Within hours, all train stations and airports were canvassed. but they found no sign of Unterweger. The serial killer was gone. Unterweger had already fled with Bianca Merak beyond the reach of Austrian authorities.
Jack Unterweger is a very good representative of an intelligent psychopath. He became an award-winning author and playwright, but psychopaths are very, very manipulative, and they have a supreme ability to con other people.
Hello? Hello? Ja. Ja, ich bin hier.
On a stop in Paris, Jack called into television shows and protested his innocence. He said his flight was not an admission of guilt, but an attempt to evade a frame-up by the police. He promised to return to Austria and answer all questions if the arrest warrant was withdrawn. Despite his media appearances, the Austrian police had no idea where Unterweger was hiding. In Vienna, investigators interviewed Unterweger's friends. They were unfazed by the fact that he had been indicted for multiple murders. They said that Jack had run off for a holiday in America with Bianca Merak, a former waitress from the wine bar. Bianca was known to live with her mother, so Geiger paid a visit to Mrs. Merak.
Mit wem?
She acknowledged that she had been in contact with the fugitive couple, sending them money via wire transfers. They were in New York and heading down to Florida. Geiger told her to contact him if her daughter called again. Mrs. Merak agreed. Just days later, she got a call from Miami. Her daughter needed more money. Mrs. Merak promptly informed the Austrian police. U.S. Marshals were waiting at the Western Union. The Marshals ID'd the couple as they drove up.
U.S. Marshals, you're under arrest! U.S. Marshals, you're under arrest!
Unterweger was quickly apprehended.
All right.
He was jailed in Miami to await extradition. Both the nation of Austria and the state of California wanted to prosecute him. LAPD Detective Fred Miller began conferring with his Austrian counterparts.
After Jack's arrest in Miami, we dealt almost on a daily schedule with the Austrian authorities, trying to put the information they had on their murders together with the information on the California murders. The Austrian authorities made trips to Los Angeles. They provided us with whatever materials we needed, photographs of the crime scenes, information on the victims, information on Jack.
The Austrians wanted to prosecute Unterweger in their court for all 11 murders. But they knew that would be difficult. The Austrian public perceived Jack as a celebrity. Detectives would have to convince them that Jack's private evil side was the reality. Special Agent Greg McCrary explains.
What's interesting with Jack, if you look at different pictures from different parts of his life, many times he's nattily attired with a bow tie and has this almost young, innocent-looking face. But then if you see him with his shirt off and you look at these really diabolical, involved prison tattoos that are typical of the more violent psychopathic offenders you have in prison, you see the dichotomy between Jack's outward appearance and the inner psychopathology becomes more apparent.
I've always tried to get
The LAPD detectives obtained a search warrant for tissue samples from the prisoner. In Miami, a technician drew blood, took hair samples and swabs of saliva for DNA testing. The samples were sent back to a Los Angeles lab for analysis. His DNA matched that found in the semen from Shannon Exley. But Exley's body contained semen from 6 other men,
And what's her last name?
and there was no sexual discharge found in the other 2 LA prostitutes. Jack Unterweger worried that he would be transferred to California, where a death penalty was possible. He did not want to die in the gas chamber. But if he went back to Austria, he could be tried for the crimes on both continents. Criminal psychologist Tom Mueller explains.
If an Austrian citizen is committing a crime wherever in the world, the Austrian law is responsible for that guy. So the American authorities gave the clearance to bring Mr. Unterweger here back to Austria.
But Unterweger could delay this by fighting extradition.
We're going to Austria.
You know, Jack.
LA detectives pressured him. They assured Unterweger that he would be found guilty in California and reminded him of the state's death penalty.
Scene of these crimes.
Fearing the gas chamber,
I want to go
he
home. I
agreed
want
to
to go to
deportation.
You'll sign the extradition.
Despite the evidence, he still enjoyed popular support at home.
Let's go.
And Unterweger believed he could persuade a jury that the authorities were wrong. But the Austrians were betting on the FBI profile. When Jack Unterweger returned to his native Austria, he faced 11 counts of murder. 7 women were killed on Austrian soil, but the laws of the Central European country allow its citizens to be tried for crimes committed anywhere in the world. The murder indictment had done little to diminish the writer's support in the media. As he sat in jail awaiting trial, Jack continued to lobby the press that the police had framed him. His case saturated the news. In this highly charged environment, Austrian prosecutors prepared for trial. If they wanted to win, they had to present an airtight case. LAPD detective Jim Harper journeyed to Vienna for the trial.
The OJ case here in LA is the only thing I can kind of equate it to. It was that big over there. It was all over the newspapers, headlines. I mean, and when we came into this town to testify, it was a big deal. We were all over the front page of the paper, the whole deal.
The trial was held before a 3-judge tribunal. The prosecution argued their case with minimal physical evidence. They were counting on Agent McCrary's behavioral profile.
Could you say why there's so many different places?
So it became increasingly important to link these crimes together behaviorally. That really was the only way that Jack could be linked to this entire series of crimes. So that became the critical component in the prosecution of Jack, and where we were most able to assist the Austrian authorities.
Take them to a different spot.
McCrary related to the judges what he had deducted at Quantico. The killer always chose prostitutes, or those who traded sex for favors. He was criminally sophisticated, older, at least in his late 30s. He wasn't panicky nor disorganized. He possessed inner rage, but it was very controlled. The victims had bruises on their wrists as if they had been restrained with handcuffs. McCrary was convinced Unterweger would ask the prostitutes to wear them to fulfill his sexual fantasy. But it was about control. The killer wanted their hands secured to prevent them from resisting.
The bodies were found
McCrary's testimony linked the victims together.
to where they were laid.
Across 2 continents, the trail of deaths followed Jack Unterweger. Where he went, women died. While he visited Los Angeles, 3 prostitutes were murdered, and their slayings mimicked those in Europe. Shannon Exley and the other 2 American women were strangled to death. The offender used their brassieres as ligatures. And Unterweger tied the knots on the ligatures in exactly the same way as he had on the ones in Europe. McCrary pointed out that the probability was infinitesimal that more than one killer committed the crimes.
What are the chances that more than one offender would be not only choosing to ligature strangle a victim with an article of her own clothing, but he would tie the knots in exactly the same way? Very, very remote chance that we've had different offenders committing the crime in that manner.
But the defense argued there was a difference. The victims in Los Angeles had been strangled with their brassieres, and women in Europe had been strangled with their pantyhose. But McCrary countered that European prostitutes do not wear brassieres. What mattered to the killer was that he used an intimate article of the victim's clothing.
The prostitutes, I'm sure that he was much more hurried.
LA criminalist Lynn Harold was asked to compare the knots from the pantyhose to those from the bras.
In the case of the pantyhose, you had one leg. The second leg was double-backed on itself and used as the third segment for the weaving or braiding, in a manner extremely similar to one of the bra cases where the two pieces of elastic formed two segments and the left strap was pulled through as the third braid.
In all, the trial lasted 2.5 months. On June 28, 1994, a jury in Graz, Austria, found Johann Jack Unterweger guilty of 9 of the murders. The remaining victims were found too badly decomposed to convict Unterweger beyond a reasonable doubt. The verdict meant life in prison to a man who swore he would never spend another day behind bars. And he never did. Unterweger strangled himself with a nylon cord stripped from his uniform.
We normally think of suicide as coming from depression or someone who feels shame or guilt or remorseful in some way. This is not at all what was going on when Jack committed suicide. More psychopathic offenders like Jack do it to exert control, and it's the last great defiant act that he exercised to wrest control of this situation away from the government, away from the authorities. He would not allow himself to be imprisoned for the rest of his life.
Jack Unterweger proved that serial killers are not just an American phenomenon. European law enforcement agencies realized that to fight criminals of this sort, they would have to follow the FBI's example.
What we learned out of their case was that in Austria and even in Europe, we didn't have a similar system like VICAP. Violent Crime Apprehension Program. The Criminal Psychology Service trying to get a similar system here to Austria, and therefore we can work with all sex crime cases and homicide cases.
Now, thanks to the lead of the FBI, many countries have adopted profiling and a computerized criminal database in the hopes that open borders and conflicting jurisdictions will no longer allow these predators to escape justice.